So my name is Marit van Dijk, which was very well said just now. It's a Dutch name. I'm from the Netherlands. Just to tell you a little bit about me. Do we get the slides? Yes. So I'm a software engineer at bol.com. We are an online retail platform in the Netherlands and Belgium. I'm also, in my spare time, if I have any, a core contributor to Cucumber, which is a BDD framework, which is also used for both behavioral-driven development and often used for test automation, which is how I started with it. I'm an organizer of the European Testing Conference, which will be in Amsterdam, February of next year, and it's a conference about testing for developers and testers. And I'm a conference speaker. I've done this talk before. But before we get started, who here contributes to open source? Oh, that's quite a few people. Awesome. Who here would like to contribute to open source but maybe doesn't know how? Awesome. That's roughly the other half. So this talk is for you. And I'll be honest, the goal of this talk is to get more of you to do your first pull request to an open source project. And please let me know if you do. Here are some people that I met, Cameron at QConfest in London, and Naomi in Tokyo at Selenium Conf, who sent me messages that after hearing my talk, they started contributing, and I love hearing that, so if you do, please let me know. So to tell you a little bit about why I got started with open source, I was relearning programming for reasons too long for this talk, and I've been doing a lot of the coding challenges. I was doing them on Katis, but you might know HackerRank or Code Wars or whatever. But I wanted to work on a real project instead and still learn new things, but also do something useful as I was learning them. And you might have other reasons that you want to contribute. For instance, you might want to scratch an itch, which is an expression saying, you know, fix something that you yourself need. If there's an open source project that you're using and maybe you'd like to improve something. You might use it to help build your resume and show off what you can do, especially if you're maybe junior or trying to switch careers. You might use it for your network to meet new people and get to know other developers in other countries. And you might have a different reason, and if so, please let me know. I'd be interested to hear why you want to contribute. So, of course, you need to find a project that you can work on. And I'd highly recommend finding a project that you use yourself, because you'll already be familiar and you'll care about the project. And for me, that project was Cucumber. I started using Cucumber when I started working at bol.com. And I really, really liked using it. Before that, we were writing test cases in plain Java, and there was lots and lots of repetition. And Cucumber gave me the option to reuse steps in test automation and make it much more easy to maintain and easy to add new test cases. And the reason that I stayed with Cucumber was really the community. And I want to thank some people in particular. Aslak and Björn on the left here. Aslak is the creator of Cucumber. And when I first started, I didn't know Git very well, and I made a mistake and accidentally merged something that wasn't ready. And I felt mortified. I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm an idiot, and they want nothing to do with me. And they were super nice about it, and they helped me fix it. And that made me feel really welcome, even as a relative beginner at the time. And the other person I really want to thank is Rien and P. Korstanje, who happens to live half an hour away from me, which I didn't know when I started, but he was super helpful in finding good issues for me to start on that were small and well-contained and not too hard and not like spread out through the whole application. And he was super helpful and still is. So obviously, who here is a programmer? Is anyone not a programmer? Okay, so the most obvious way that you can contribute, would be to add code to a project. And a reasonably good way to start is to fix bugs. So I think this was my second pull request. I fixed a bug. It was relatively small and easy to get started with. Add tests to reproduce the bug, fix the bug, see that the tests now pass. I would also like to add new features, but to be honest, I haven't yet. So if whatever your favorite open source project is, and you think you have a cool new feature, then please go ahead and help them. Do check with them if it's a feature that they want. But we'll get into that more. You can help refactor code. This is a relatively easy one, using a bit more idiomatic Kotlin. It fits nicely on a slide. I've done some bigger refactors, but they don't really fit. Add unit tests. In fact, this was my very first pull request to Cucumber JVM, which was a unit test to show that an issue that had been registered maybe 1 or 2 years earlier had already been fixed, because the test did not reproduce it even with the specific information that was given. You can update dependencies to the projects that you're using. For instance, I got a notification through GitHub that a Jackson Databind version had some security issues, and I saw that we were still getting that in one of our projects through GraphQL dependencies, so I sent a merge request to those projects to update that Jackson Databind version, and that's a really relatively small change that you can do. You fork the project, make the change, do the PR. It might take you 10, 15 minutes. And you can review PRs, which is also a really good way to get to know the project and see if you understand the change that someone made, and you might have like a fresh perspective on how to make it more clear what the code should do. I've done this presentation also in testers conferences where not everyone is able to read and write code. I really like this quote. It says, "Please don't feel you have nothing to contribute to free and open source software if you aren't a programmer, because other than programmers, there are lots of skills that are needed to help make an open source project successful." And this is from the book Forge Your Future with Open Source. I have no ties with the author or publisher whatsoever, but I really do recommend this book if you're interested in how to get started with open source. It tells you pretty much everything I'm going to tell you in this talk, and so much more about the background of how did open source come to be, and a lot more about intellectual property and things to think of if you're doing open source. So in terms of not code, you can help the community, you can help write the documentation, you can report issues, you can do testing, even if it's just testing a release candidate. And there are so many more things that are needed and not often offered, like doing design for the website, or a friend of mine is a product owner for an open source project. And if you want to help but you don't know where to get started, ask. Many of the communities have Slacks or Gitters or ways that you can communicate with them. And you can say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, this is my experience, I would like to help, what can I do?" Most projects would welcome help, and they can just work with you to see what you can help on. So answering questions, like I said, for Cucumber we have a Slack and a Gitter and a mailing list. Other projects might have different ways of communicating, but if you can just hang out there and help people with questions and answer their questions and help them how to do it, then you free up time for the actual maintainers to fix bugs and add features. And I've even closed issues in GitHub because we use it to track only bugs and feature requests and not questions, because we have all of the other communication methods, support methods. So I closed it, but did help the person, and they were fine with that. And if there are questions that come up more often, then please add that to the documentation, because clearly it's not explained somewhere. You can fix typos. I know it sounds trivial, but I was playing around with PyTest. Who here knows what PyTest is? Mutation testing library. Okay, so PyTest is a mutation testing library you can use with Java. And I was just playing around with it, and I found a typo in one of the error messages, and I don't like typos, so I fixed that. I was reading the Docker documentation and found a dead link in there, which was coincidentally the one to get support, which really shouldn't be dead. So I fixed that. And again, those are really small, don't take a lot of time. You can get them done quickly. You can provide feedback. I've read and written and rewritten the documentation for Cucumber so many times, I don't know if it's clear for someone who's new to Cucumber. So, someone who's reading that and thinks, hey, I really don't understand this concept, and lets me know, then I can work with them. How can we make that clearer? And edit for clarity. You can also add missing information. I have 2 examples here. One is I was doing a Spring tutorial, and there was like a really tiny trivial step that was missing. But it really made me wonder, like, am I doing something wrong? I'm just trying to learn something. It doesn't do what it says it should do. So I was able to figure that out, but I did add to the documentation this little tiny step for whoever is next doing this tutorial doesn't have to wonder and find out by themselves. And another thing that I did was add a page to the Cucumber documentation based on talks that Aslak did on testable architecture, and basically summarizing a blog post and a talk that he did into a 1-page in the documentation. And I quite like this feedback. It totally goes in my brag file. And again, you can review PRs also on the documentation. Ola, who I've never met, I don't even know where he lives, in the world, usually reviews my documentation PRs quite quickly and always manages to tweak them just a little bit and make them better, and that's the collaboration part that I really, really love. So issues, you might want to report issues. Before you do, please ask the community, hey, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something, or did I really just find a bug? And make sure that someone else has not already filed that bug. And as developers, you need information to be able to reproduce that bug so that you can fix that bug. So please provide all relevant information if you do file an issue. GitHub allows you to use templates for that. So a project might have set up a template asking for the information that they need. And if they don't, then that's also a good first PR to do. At least start with, what's your issue? What's it doing? What should it do? What are the steps to reproduce? And add a template to the project. If you can, or they might ask you to, create a minimal, complete, verifiable example. That's what those letters stand for. So reproduce your issue in as small a way as you can so that they can study it and figure out what's going wrong. If you don't have an issue but you want to help clear out a bunch of issues, then see if there are any issues that have information missing and see if you can reproduce them and add relevant information, things that you find out on how to reproduce it. Or better yet, if you can, add a test that reproduces the issue even if you don't know how to fix it. That will help them to fix it. And you can triage and label issues, like how bad is this issue, what is it related to? For instance, Cucumber can be used with many different tools like TestNG or JUnit or Spring or Kotlin or Java or whatever. And we try to label them so that it's easier to find an issue that is similar to yours or that is of the type that you might want to fix. We always need testing. You can test bug fix, new features, new releases. We have, for the Cucumber JVM, we have version 5 release candidate that's out. So if you use Cucumber, please give that a try if you can. I've also tested new features when we built in Cucumber expressions in version 3, just by using that in some of my projects and seeing, is it easy to use? Do I understand how to use it? Do I find any weird stuff? And I found some bugs in that. Test the documentation, just, make sure that it's clear and understandable. We have, for Cucumber, we have a tutorial, 10-minute tutorial in 4 different languages, which is Java, Kotlin, JavaScript, and Ruby. I know Java and Kotlin. I know just enough JavaScript to do that tutorial, and then I'm out of my depth, and I don't know any Ruby. So if there are any changes in there, I need someone from the Ruby community to help me make sure that the tutorial still is complete and in the right order and correct. A reminder, I know that we get frustrated with our tools, but most open source tools are made by volunteers. I don't get paid for any of my work on it. I just do it in my spare time because I like to do it, because I'm weird, I guess. So, you know, if there's a project that you like, tell them. They'll be very, very happy to hear that. Here are just some examples of, you know, tell them I like this project because it has helped me, because they love to hear that. That's the least you can do if you enjoy it. If you don't have any time or any other way to contribute, but the project really does help you in your work, you or your employer can donate money, and different projects might have different ways that they allow you to do that. Cucumber uses Open Collective. Selenium goes through the Software Foundation Conservancy. I know that Sam Aaron, who created Sonic Pi, which is live coding, which we'll see next, but not from Sam Aaron, but from someone else, but super cool. Sam Aaron uses Patreon. Other people use TideLift, or TideLift is a company that takes money from enterprises and then distributes over open source. So there are all kinds of ways that if open source is helping your company, you can give back. Now, I know there are reasons that you might not want to contribute or haven't contributed yet. I hope that I've given you some examples and maybe sparked an idea of, hey, that's something that I could do. But I realize that it is scary, because you're coming to offer, hi, I'd like to offer this to your project. And they might turn you down. You might feel like, I have nothing to offer. I hope I've shown you there's plenty that you can offer, even if you're a new programmer or not a programmer at all. All of you are, that's fine. You might have other limitations. You might not have time. If you have a full-time job and a family, other hobbies, whatever, speaking habit and going to conferences, you might not have a lot of time. And you might have legal limitations in that your employer doesn't allow you to contribute code. In that case, maybe there are things that you can still do, like answer questions on a Slack, but tread carefully on intellectual property rights. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to advise you there. You might have bad experience. You might run into a project that hasn't been maintained in a long while. The people might not give you proper feedback or timely feedback. They might be rude. And occasionally there are just bad actors, people that don't play well with others. Then step away from that project. You know, the gif of Homer going back into the plants, and find somewhere where you are appreciated, because I know those projects are out there, and most projects would be very, very happy to have you. So you find a project, and if you found a project, you need to check how to contribute to that particular project, find a task, and maybe set up your environment if it needs any special things, and then you start your collaboration. So like I said, find a project that you use and that you like. If you don't have such a project, there are plenty of ways to give you ideas. I'm going to post these slides on a slide deck later and tweet the link. That's my Twitter handle over there if you want to follow me. And focus on a welcoming project, that they want your help. And if you're not sure, then just observe the interaction in the community. How are they answering questions from people and offering support? How do they provide feedback on PRs that are submitted? Do they help you with onboarding? Do they make it easy to find a good issue for you to start contributing and help you out with your first contribution? You might look for the following documents: the README, which should explain a little bit about what this project is, contributing, or sometimes called hacking, which should tell you, how do I build this project, what do I need, how do I contribute, and a license, or copying, which tells you how you are allowed to use the project. And other things to look for would be a code of conduct that describes how people in the community want to interact with each other, and make sure that that's also how you want to interact with other people and work with them. There might be style guides, how do you format your code and things like that. And some projects have a contributor license agreement, which is a form that you need to sign to say, I am giving away this code to the project. And if you don't know how to get started, then again, ask the community. And what can you do? Of course, if you have a problem that you want to solve, you can solve that. That's a great way to start. That's how Rien, who is doing a lot of the Cucumber JVM right now, got started. Another way is we try to label the issues as a good first issue, meaning that it's not too big and not too complicated, so this is a good place to start. And we label some with help wanted, which is often, this is a combination with a tool that none of us currently use, so if you do and you want this fixed, then we can really use your help. And again, if you want to help but you can't find an issue for you to work on, ask. Often there's stuff that isn't even listed in the issue tracker, like, hey, we have a new release candidate that needs testing, and they'll just tell you what you can do. You might need to set up some of your environment. If you don't have Git or version control or a programming environment or package manager that is used, and then on GitHub, you need to fork and clone the project, which is anyone not familiar with Git workflow? Not too much. There's guides on GitHub, if that's where the project lives, that you can use on how that works. I highly recommend seeing if you can actually build the project based on the information that you provide. I recommend that also for work projects, by the way, because sometimes information goes missing. And if you can't, then ask the community again, how do I get this to build? I'm having this trouble, and maybe some of the information is missing in the contributing guide, and you can add that and help the next person to come along. So you'll start to work on your contribution. If you've already been in contact with the community, they will know, like, I would like to pick up this issue. It's helpful to tell them, I would like to pick up this issue so that someone else doesn't work on it, and your effort goes to waste. At a certain point, hopefully you'll submit your contribution and wait for feedback, and they will give you feedback, and you might need to iterate. They might have comments on, can you do it just a little bit more this way so that it fits better with the project? Or coding styles, or whatever their comments may be, and you can iterate and work with them and learn from that to make a contribution that is helpful to the project. And then hopefully your contribution will be accepted. And this was my very first one in 2017. Unfortunately, it does happen that your contribution is declined. And I really want to point out this quote from Jesse Frizzell: "No is temporary and yes is forever." You might have a feature that is very, very exotic to your use case and doesn't fit the vision of the project. So they might decline to take that on, because if they merge it, that feature is forever and they'll have to support it, even long after your use case has gone away. So that's, again, why I say if you want to go work on something or you want to add a feature, talk to the community first and make sure that it's something that they want. But hopefully it'll be accepted, but in the meantime, really do ask them and communicate with them on how you can solve a problem in a way that's helpful. And as someone on the maintaining side, I really, really love getting PRs, and I wanted to share this one. Do you ever have a rough day and then someone puts in a PR that fixes someone else's issue on your repo just because open source is rad and gives you a new lease on life? And that's really describes the feeling of someone randomly coming by and going like, okay, change this, and now it's much nicer. I started adding Kotlin to our Cucumber documentation when I just first started with Kotlin and wasn't really writing idiomatic Kotlin. It was more like Java sort of translated into Kotlin, you know, as you do. And someone stopped by and was like, made everything idiomatic, and I'm like, oh, I don't know you, but I love this PR. And similarly, someone changed the wording in some of our documentation to make it more welcoming. I wasn't aware of it, but we were using things like, just do this or simply do that. And if someone is having a problem, that doesn't sound very nice. So I was actually also a little mortified by that one because I wasn't aware that we were doing it, but I loved that person for stepping in and making that better. And so the TLDR, or too long didn't read, contributing to open source doesn't have to take a lot of time or programming skills. There are small things that you can do, and really every little small thing that you do makes us very, very happy. If you want to contribute but you don't know how, just ask. If you have a project that you like and you want to help them out, ask them. They should be very, very happy to have any help. And please go forth and collaborate with people on open source. Thank you.